My colleague was spreading lies about me to get a promotion, but I turned the tables. I've never been the type to stir up drama at work. I've always kept my head down, worked hard, and let my results speak for themselves. But when I found out that my colleague, Greg, had been spreading lies about me to undermine my credibility and get a promotion I was clearly qualified for, I was furious. What made it worse was that he'd been doing it behind my back for months. The worst part, it was working. His lies were starting to stick, and it felt like I was losing everything I had worked for. But instead of letting it destroy me, I decided to take control. I turned the tables and exposed Greg's dirty tactics in a way he never saw coming. This is the story of how I fought back, and how the tables eventually turned in my favor. I remember the first time I started feeling like something was off. It wasn't anything too dramatic at first, just little things. For a while, I'd been working on a big project that had the potential to impress upper management. I was confident about it. My boss seemed happy with my progress, and everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. But then I started noticing Greg's behavior. He would hover around my desk more than usual, asking questions that seemed innocent at first. "How's that project coming along?" Or, "I heard you're going for that promotion. How's that going?" He'd even try to take a sneak peek at my screen when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I brushed it off at first, telling myself that he was just being friendly. After all, we were colleagues. But over time, his comments became more pointed. He would start casually mentioning things like, "Yeah, it's tough working with that team. Some people just don't have the right vision for the project." Or he'd nod knowingly when someone else mentioned my progress, as if to imply that he was the one who had been working hard on it. It wasn't long before I began hearing rumors. A couple of colleagues mentioned Greg had been talking about how difficult it was to collaborate with me. One even said that Greg had been telling people I had been falling behind on the project. I was shocked. How could anyone think that? I had been putting in extra hours, staying late, and going above and beyond. I couldn't understand what was happening. I thought Greg and I were on good terms, but it started to feel like he was actively trying to undermine me. It didn't take long for things to escalate. One afternoon, my boss called me into his office for a casual chat. I'd worked with him for over a year, and this was the first time he'd asked to meet like this. I thought it was just a routine check-in, but as soon as I sat down, I could tell something was off. He had a concerned look on his face, like he was choosing his words carefully. "So, I've been hearing some things from Greg," my boss began. My stomach dropped. Greg? Why was he talking to my boss about me? "Apparently, there have been some challenges with your team collaboration. He mentioned that the project you're leading is falling behind and that there have been issues with communication." I froze. That wasn't just untrue, it was a straight-up lie. I had been in constant communication with my team, and my work had been consistently praised by both my colleagues and our clients. But hearing that Greg had said this to my boss shook me to my core. I tried to explain calmly, "I'm not sure where that's coming from. Everything is on track, and the team is in agreement about the project's direction. If there were any issues, I would have addressed them." My boss didn't seem fully convinced. He nodded, but his face remained skeptical. "I just wanted to check in with you directly. I know Greg's been here longer, and I trust his judgment." The words hit me hard. Greg had been here longer than I had, but that didn't mean he had any right to manipulate the situation to his advantage. It became clear to me that Greg wasn't just making casual comments. He was actively sabotaging my reputation. This wasn't just workplace gossip anymore. Greg was trying to paint me in a bad light so that he could take credit for my hard work and secure the promotion that I deserved. I left my boss's office feeling frustrated and betrayed. Greg's lies had planted seeds of doubt in my boss's mind, and that was exactly what he wanted. But I wasn't about to let him win without a fight. If he thought I was going to sit back and let him steal my promotion, he was gravely mistaken. I needed a plan, something that would not only clear my name, but also expose Greg for the manipulative, deceitful person he was. But how could I do that without sinking to his level? I wasn't about to play dirty, but I couldn't let him get away with lying about me either. I started by quietly documenting everything I could: emails, meeting notes, and anything else that proved I was on top of the project. I also kept track of my interactions with Greg. It wasn't that I didn't trust my memory, but I knew I needed hard evidence if I was going to expose him. The first thing I did was schedule a meeting with my boss to go over the project again. I needed to ensure that he saw my progress firsthand. I spent the next few days perfecting my presentation, highlighting all the milestones I had hit, and making sure to include feedback from my team. I wasn't going to let Greg's lies go unchecked, but I wasn't going to get caught up in drama either. My focus was on results. But I also knew that this was about more than just presenting my work. I needed to show my boss that I was reliable, competent, and transparent. Greg was trying to manipulate the narrative by creating doubt, and I had to show that I had nothing to hide. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was both nervous and determined. I knew this was my chance to turn the tide, but I had to remain calm, professional, and focused on the facts. Greg had planted his seeds of doubt, but I was going to show my boss the truth and make sure my hard work didn't go unnoticed. I walked into my boss's office with a folder full of detailed notes, progress reports, and feedback from my team. "Hey, thanks for meeting with me again," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course. Let's take a look at where you're at with the project," my boss replied, motioning for me to sit down. I went through everything: timeline updates, budget reports, and key accomplishments. I made sure to highlight all the positive feedback from both clients and colleagues, showing that the project was on track and well within expectations. But I didn't stop there. I also carefully included a few comments from my team about how well we had been collaborating, debunking any notion that there were communication issues. As I finished, I looked up at my boss. "I understand there may have been some concerns about the project, but I want to reassure you that everything is moving forward as planned. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm more than happy to answer them." My boss nodded, clearly impressed with the thoroughness of my presentation. "I appreciate you putting this together," he said. "It's clear you've been working hard on this. I'll take a closer look at everything, and we'll move forward accordingly." I left the meeting feeling a bit of relief. I had done everything I could to show that my work spoke for itself. But there was one thing left to do. I needed to make sure Greg knew that I wasn't going down without a fight. After the meeting with my boss, I felt a shift. I knew I had made my case, but I also knew Greg wasn't going to back down that easily. He was sneaky and manipulative, and I couldn't afford to let him undermine me again. It was time to take action. I decided that the next step would be to confront Greg, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that would make him understand that I wasn't going to let him sabotage my career any longer. I needed to expose his tactics without giving him a chance to twist the narrative. The next day, when I saw Greg in the office kitchen, I decided it was time. He was standing by the coffee machine, looking at his phone. I walked over casually, trying to keep my composure. "Hey Greg, got a minute?" I asked, pretending to be casual. He looked up from his phone, a surprised look on his face. "Yeah, sure. What's up?" I took a deep breath, deciding to go for it. "I just wanted to clear the air about something. I've heard some things going around, and I think it's important to address it." Greg's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "What are you talking about?" "About the project," I said, leaning in slightly. "I know you've been telling people there are issues with the team collaboration, but the thing is, I've been documenting everything. The feedback from clients, team communication, the progress reports, it's all clear, and I think you know that." Greg's eyes narrowed just a little, but he didn't say anything immediately. I could see the tension rising in him, but I didn't back down. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Greg, but I want you to know that I've taken steps to make sure my work speaks for itself. So, whatever game you're playing, it's not going to work anymore." I paused, letting that sink in. "You should also know that I've spoken to our boss, and I made sure he has all the facts. If you're trying to manipulate the situation to get ahead, you might want to rethink your strategy, because I won't let you do it at my expense." Greg stood there, frozen for a moment. His mouth opened like he was going to say something, but then he closed it again. I could tell he hadn't expected me to confront him directly like this. "I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes," he muttered, his voice low. "I'm just doing what I think is best." "You're doing what's best for you," I shot back, keeping my voice steady. "And it's not going to work. Not anymore." He stood there in silence, and for a brief moment, it felt like everything hung in the balance. Then, with a stiff nod, Greg turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and uncertainty. I didn't know what would happen next, but I had made my point. I had stood up for myself, and now I had to wait and see how Greg would respond. The next few days were tense. I could feel the shift in the office atmosphere. Greg wasn't speaking to me much, and whenever we crossed paths, there was this odd, heavy silence between us. It wasn't the usual friendly, casual exchanges anymore. It felt like something had broken, something I couldn't fully understand yet. But I knew it wasn't going to stay quiet for long. But what was even more unsettling was the fact that my boss seemed distant too. I'd had that meeting with him, and I thought I had cleared the air. However, I noticed that he was taking a little longer to respond to my emails, and when he did respond, his tone was slightly more formal than it used to be. I started to wonder if Greg had said something to him after our conversation. Maybe he was spinning a different version of the story. I couldn't afford to let Greg turn the narrative back in his favor, so I decided to follow up with my boss. The next day I walked into his office, trying to keep my cool. "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" I asked. He looked up from his desk, a bit surprised. "Of course, come in. What's on your mind?" I sat down and went straight to the point. "I just wanted to follow up on our last conversation. I know we discussed the project, and I wanted to make sure everything is clear. I've been hearing some rumors about the team dynamic, and I just want to make sure there's no confusion about my role in all of this. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. I appreciate you bringing this up. To be honest, I did hear some concerns from Greg about the project. He mentioned a few things regarding team collaboration and some minor setbacks. I could feel my heart rate spike, but I kept my face neutral. Minor setbacks? That's not what we discussed. I've been in constant communication with the team, and everything has been moving forward as planned. I don't know where those concerns are coming from, but they're not true. My boss nodded slowly, clearly weighing my words. I trust your judgment, and I know you've been working hard. I just wanted to make sure I had all the information. I took a deep breath, standing my ground. I don't want to get into office politics, but I feel it's important to address this directly. If Greg has concerns, I'm happy to hear them. But I'm also not going to let him manipulate the situation to his advantage. I've been doing my part to keep the project on track, and I just want to make sure my work is being recognized fairly. He looked at me for a moment, then gave a slight nod. I hear you. I'll take that into account. We'll discuss this more when we meet for the quarterly reviews. The conversation ended there, but I felt like I had made my point. My boss seemed receptive, but I could tell that Greg's words had still made an impact. It wasn't over yet. Greg might have been quiet, but I had a feeling he wasn't done playing his game. A few more days passed, and the office tension only seemed to grow. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still brewing beneath the surface. Greg was keeping his distance, but I knew he wasn't just going to let things go. I had made it clear that I wasn't backing down, but I also knew that Greg had a knack for turning things around and playing the victim. Then, one morning, I got a notification from HR that a formal complaint had been filed against me. My heart sank as I opened the email. It was from Greg. He had gone to HR, claiming that I was sabotaging the project, undermining him, and spreading false information about his work. The accusation was absurd and completely baseless, but seeing it in writing made my blood boil. Greg was trying to twist the truth to make it look like I was the problem. I took a deep breath and knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I immediately gathered all the evidence I had: emails, meeting notes, feedback from my team, everything that proved I had been nothing but professional and transparent. I knew this wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about exposing Greg's lies once and for all. I requested a meeting with HR. When the time came, I walked into the meeting with a stack of documents in hand, my mind focused and clear. I wasn't going to let Greg manipulate the situation any longer. The HR manager, Jenna, was sitting at the table when I arrived. She looked up at me and gestured for me to sit. "We've received some serious complaints about your behavior, and we need to get to the bottom of this," she said, her tone neutral. I took a deep breath. "I understand, but I'm here to clear things up. These allegations aren't true, and I have all the documentation to prove it." Jenna raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but willing to listen. "I'd like to hear your side of the story." I laid out the evidence, every email, every meeting record, every piece of feedback from my colleagues. I calmly explained the timeline of events, highlighting the work I had done, the progress I had made, and the way I had consistently communicated with my team. I pointed out the fact that I had no issues with collaboration, and that the accusations Greg had made were completely unfounded. As I finished presenting everything, I could see Jenna's expression shift. "This is quite a bit of evidence," she said, looking over the documents. "I'll need to look into this further, but it seems like there's been some misunderstanding." "I'm not just trying to clear my name," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to expose what's really been happening. Greg has been spreading lies about me, undermining my work to try to get ahead. He's trying to make it look like I'm the problem when, in fact, it's him who's been sabotaging the project." Jenna looked at me thoughtfully for a moment before responding. "I'll need to speak with Greg to get his side of the story. We'll conduct a full investigation." As I left the HR office, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Greg had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let him destroy my career for his own gain. But now, the ball was in HR's court. It was up to them to see through his lies. The days after my meeting with HR were some of the longest I've ever experienced. I knew the wheels were in motion, but I had no idea what would happen next. Greg had no idea that I had turned the tables on him, but I could tell he was getting nervous. He wasn't as confident as before. I'd seen it in the way he was avoiding eye contact, in the way he seemed a little more anxious in meetings. His facade was starting to crack, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction. Then one afternoon I received an email from HR asking me to come in for another meeting. This was it. The investigation was wrapping up. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I had done everything in my power to show that I was in the right. I walked into the meeting room with a sense of calm confidence. This time, Jenna was there with Greg. He looked uncomfortable, sitting in his chair, hands clasped in front of him. I could tell he wasn't ready for what was about to unfold. "Thanks for coming in," Jenna began. "We've completed the investigation into the complaints you both filed. We've reviewed the evidence, spoken to your colleagues, and examined all the documentation provided." I sat up straighter, trying not to show too much emotion. Greg was silent, but I could see the nervous energy in his eyes. "After thorough review," Jenna continued, "it has come to our attention that the allegations against your name are unfounded. The accusations of workplace sabotage and spreading misinformation were not supported by the evidence. In fact, the documentation and feedback provided by your colleagues show a very different picture." Greg's face turned pale. I could see him clenching his fists under the table. He was trying to hide his frustration, but it was clear that his plan was falling apart. Jenna didn't stop there. "Additionally," Jenna added, her voice steady, "it appears that there were inconsistencies in the information provided by Greg. Our investigation found that some of the claims made about team collaboration were inaccurate and fabricated to make it appear as though your name was not meeting expectations." I watched as Greg's face twisted with a mixture of disbelief and anger. He wasn't expecting the investigation to go this way. He had thought he could outsmart everyone, but the truth had come to light. "We take these matters very seriously," Jenna said, "and based on our findings, we will be taking appropriate actions. This includes additional training on professional conduct and communication, as well as a formal warning regarding behavior that undermines colleagues." I felt a mix of relief and justice wash over me. Greg had been caught in his lies, and now the consequences were on him. But I also knew this wasn't just about him. This was about standing up for myself, not letting someone else define my reputation, and making sure that integrity and transparency won. The days following the meeting with HR were a whirlwind. Word about the investigation started to spread around the office, and although I didn't hear the specifics, I could tell that people had started to look at Greg differently. The once confident and overly friendly coworker had become a bit of an outcast. His attempts to smear my name had backfired spectacularly, and now everyone knew what he'd done. I'll admit, part of me felt bad for him. As much as I wanted to see him face the consequences for his actions, I also realized that Greg was just a product of his own insecurities. He was trying to climb the corporate ladder at any cost, even if it meant destroying others in the process. But that didn't change the fact that his lies had almost cost me everything. I spent the next few days working with a renewed sense of focus. I could finally breathe a little easier, knowing that my reputation and hard work were intact. I had proven myself, not just to my boss, but to everyone who mattered. But even with the weight off my shoulders, I wasn't done yet. I knew that in a corporate environment, the game wasn't over after one victory. I still had to show that I could rise above all of this and keep pushing forward. A few days later, my boss called me into his office. I had no idea what to expect, but as I sat down, he looked at me with a more relaxed expression than usual. "You've handled this situation really well," he said. "I want you to know that we're all impressed with how you've managed everything. It wasn't easy, but you've proven that you can take on more responsibility." I smiled, relieved but not surprised. "Thanks, I just did what I had to do." He nodded, clearly pleased. "You've earned it. That's why I wanted to let you know that we're officially considering you for the promotion. We're confident you have what it takes to lead." I was speechless for a moment. My mind raced. The promotion I'd been working toward for so long, after everything that had happened, it was finally within my grasp, and it felt like the sweetest victory of all. "Thank you," I said finally, my voice steady. "I won't let you down." The days after the promotion announcement were a whirlwind of excitement and reflection. I had spent so long working hard to prove myself, but now I had the recognition I deserved. Getting that promotion felt like more than just a career achievement. It was a personal victory. I had faced betrayal, rumors, and lies, but I had come out on top, stronger and more determined than ever. Greg, on the other hand, wasn't as lucky. After the fallout, I noticed he kept a low profile around the office. He wasn't openly hostile, but the damage to his reputation was clear. He'd lost the trust of a lot of people, and despite the training and warning from HR, it was hard to see how he could recover from what he'd done. I didn't feel satisfaction watching him suffer, but I felt a sense of justice. His actions had consequences, and he'd learned the hard way that deceit wasn't the way to get ahead. As for me, I didn't want to dwell on the drama anymore. I had a new position, new responsibilities, and a renewed sense of purpose. I focused on the work I had to do, continuing to build the team and push forward with the projects I was passionate about. The environment at work had improved overall. I could tell that people were starting to see me in a new light, not just as someone who could do the job, but as a leader they could trust. A few weeks after the promotion, I ran into one of my colleagues, Sarah, in the hallway. She had been one of the first to hear the rumors that Greg had started spreading about me, and she had always been a good ally throughout the whole ordeal. "Hey, I just wanted to say congratulations again. You really handled all of that with so much grace," Sarah said, giving me a warm smile. "Thanks," I said, grateful for her support. "It wasn't easy, but I'm glad it's all behind me. You know," she continued, "I think the whole office is respecting you more now. It's not easy to go through something like that and come out on top, but you did. You showed everyone what kind of person you are." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "I guess I just had to do what was right. I'm not about the drama, but when people try to tear you down, you have to stand up for yourself." "Exactly," she agreed. "And now you're in the position you deserve. It's inspiring, honestly." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of satisfaction that wasn't just about the promotion. It was about knowing that I had done the right thing, that I hadn't stooped to Greg's level. I had risen above the lies and had come out on top, on my own terms. Looking back on everything, I realize how much I've grown. This experience taught me that success isn't just about doing the right work. It's about standing up for yourself, maintaining your integrity, and not letting others define your worth. When someone tries to tear you down, it's easy to get caught up in the drama and play by their rules. But in the end, staying true to who you are and doing the work is what really pays off. If you've ever faced a situation where someone tried to sabotage your progress or spread lies about you, how did you handle it? What did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories of resilience and personal growth.